Thank you very much for attending this event tonight. You have a lot of other options in your life. You're busy people. You could be at Carrie Underwood right now, right? You maybe bumped into that on the way here tonight. And when I was talking to Brianne earlier in the week, she said, "You do realize it's the same night as Carrie Underwood, right?" I said, "Oh boy, I'll never hear the end of that from Carrie and her management team. We're going to draw a lot of people away from that tonight, but oh well." So I'm glad you're here. And I was just informed that tonight is Chris's birthday, Chris Westcott. So I like to make events interactive. So I think we're going to start. Our first activity is going to be a little happy birthday to Chris. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chris. Happy birthday to you. Good job, Chris. So now that we've clearly established there's no one in the room with singing talent, we'll move on to how you develop talent, all right? So I chose this picture. First of all, thank you, Brianne and Chris and everyone else for being here and for nominating me. And it's a great opportunity to teach and to learn. And I hope that you'll be able to take something away from tonight, too. So I chose this photograph for the beginning and kind of ending also of tonight's talk, because it's one of the photos that are continually being streamed back from our deep space probes from NASA. And it reminded me of a time when I was speaking to a guy named Terry Orlick, and my wife Janelle knows him very well. And he's an eminent sports psychologist, works with Olympic athletes, astronauts, a lot of high-performance people. And I remember him saying one time when he was working with astronauts that it struck him when he was in a room with them at one of their training centers. They had on the whiteboard in the back, said, "The sky is not the limit." And I thought, yeah, why do we set limits? You know, we've all heard that saying, the sky is the limit. So, and really, if you're an astronaut, truly the sky is not the limit. So it got me thinking, that's a nice way to kind of think of talent development. Number one, why set limits? So the sky is not the limit. And we saw that this year, right? Everybody knows this person's name? Felix Baumgartner, yes. So Felix Baumgartner this year made history. This is nominated for one of the photos of the year, actually, 2012, when he broke the free fall record, 24 miles above Earth out of a capsule. And he took him about 4.5 minutes to get down, 830 miles an hour, free fall. And this is an example of someone who truly does not believe that the sky is the limit, right? And he landed safely out here in front of Save Mart Center on the grass. No. He landed in New Mexico out in the desert, and quite an amazing achievement. So it got me thinking about other people who are famous for going above and beyond. The sky is not the limit. And then I thought of immediately Buzz Lightyear. And Buzz Lightyear is one of the most famous animated characters in the history of film. And you may not know this, but Buzz Lightyear has actually been into space. NASA had a program in 2008 called Toys in Space. So Buzz literally has gone above and beyond, to infinity and beyond. But NASA's Toys in Space program is not to be confused with the much earlier Pigs in Space program, preceding Buzz by many years. So if we get back to Buzz and we think about what is it about Buzz Lightyear that resonates with so many people, and how does that relate to talent development, you really have to have a goal, right? Buzz had a goal in life. And here's an example of someone with a need, striving for needs, needing to do something. And this is another epic photo from 2012. This is a gentleman, Mr. Wallenda, who actually was the first person to walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. And you may have seen it, it was on national TV. But they made him wear an ankle bracelet or chain because they weren't going to pay him if he went without the bracelet and the chain. He wanted to do it without it, unassisted, but they said, "No, we're not putting that on TV. You get your paycheck if you put this on your ankle." So he did make it across. He had a need, driven by a clear need. In this case, get to the other side. Very clearly defined need. You also, Buzz Lightyear, I think, exemplified our second principle, which is mastery. So you might need something, but you have to really want to accomplish it. You have to stick with it, and it's going to take a long time. Hard things take a long time, and lots of failure. And this is an example. 2012, the Los Angeles Kings won the Stanley Cup, NHL team. First time in the history of their franchise. They were terrible for many, many years, but they stuck with it. And then the third principle that I think we see with Buzz Lightyear, he surrounded himself with a lot of other toys who wanted to do crazy things and go on adventures. And so you need to be in the right setting. You need to create or find the right environment to allow you to develop your talent. This is a picture, an aerial photograph of Buchanan Educational Complex here in Clovis. And there's 5,000 students from kindergarten to grade 12 that attend this complex. And this is a great example of a talent development setting. Now, if you didn't go to Buchanan High School, you went to Clovis West or someplace, you might not want to listen to this, but they were voted the High School of the Year, Athletics High School of the Year in 2006. Their baseball team was ranked #1 in the country a couple of years ago. They routinely have student athletes who get scholarships to Division I programs. And down here you have our track and football stadium, baseball, multiple baseball and softball fields, multiple pools, tennis courts. So when I have friends who visit from other countries and I show them things like this is an Olympic training center in most other parts of the world. And we have 10 of these in town. And this is one little town when you factor in Fresno and other areas. So you have to be in the right place or create those conditions. Otherwise, I don't care how much you want it and how much skill you think you might have, if you're not in the right place or you don't have the mastery or you don't really have that desire, it's not going to happen. You're not going to fly. And tonight, we're going to walk through these 3 principles: needs, mastery, and settings. And I'm going to show you lots of examples. And I'm also going to show you some science behind these examples. And I show you this picture because this is an aerial photograph of a subdivision in Arizona. And the reason I show it to you is because you can clearly see a pattern here, can't you? But if you're standing on the street, you're not seeing that pattern. You're going to miss it. You're seeing a house or an angle, but you're not going to see this whole picture or these patterns and principles. So to really understand talent development, I share this with you to highlight that point that you need to go multidisciplinary. You need to step out of your field, biology or coaching or science, of whatever, to see across disciplines, to see these patterns. Otherwise, you'll miss them. And a lot of us get so focused on our own little discipline or our own little area that we miss the big principles. So that's what I'm going to try and do tonight, is move above that. We're also going to do a few activities because my field is multidisciplinary in kinesiology and active. So you're going to do a few activities tonight. Don't worry, nothing too serious, but you will be moving a little bit. First activity is I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people think they can spell the word thank you in English? If you had to. If your life depended on it, you could pull it out. If your hand's not up, you're not going to do well tonight. Okay. So yeah, you can do it. Everybody, you look around the room, everyone can do that, right? What if I asked you, show of hands, how many people can spell thank you in French? I have a few, right? Merci, or merci beaucoup if you want to say thank you very much. So only a few. Everybody in the room puts their hand up for English, 3 or 4 for French. And this is a great example of these 3 principles in action, okay? Now, why, you may say? You all had a need at some point in your life to master the skill of spelling thank you in English. Probably around 4 or 5 years old, maybe parents forcing you to write thank you letters to people after Christmas or birthdays. So there was a need to master a skill, you did. But if you never had the need to master it in another language, you didn't. Needs, mastery, and settings. Now you see, these are the 3 principles that we're going to go through tonight: needs, mastery, and settings. I had a need to master spelling thank you in French, so I learned how to do it because I grew up in Canada. This is in front of my parents' house back in Canada, and this is how we drive our cars in Canada. So you can see, we don't bother scraping the snow off, we just roll the window down and you put your head out while you're driving, right? So you're in a rush, you got to get somewhere, you do it this way. And this is in July. This is summer, right? No. But it highlights the point: needs drive mastery in the right setting. Needs, mastery, and settings. You may not know it, but if you're here long enough during the reception tonight, the music was designed to reinforce these points. So for needs, you may have heard song from, in this case here, Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me. You also may have heard Baby, I Need Your Lovin' by the Four Tops, needs. For mastery, you may have heard Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, right? I Won't Back Down, or Mission by Rush. And lastly, for settings, you may have heard Small Town by John Mellencamp, and you'll see this later on. There's a lot of science actually behind this. And then lastly, Blake Shelton, Trace Atkins, Hillbilly Bone. I know you all got one, right? Look where we are. There's one out there. So we're going to go through the format for these three principles. Will be I'm going to share a few cases, and I'll state the principle, share a few cases, famous cases, then a little bit of science. So it's not a class you're in right now, but I want you to understand there's science behind these things. And then we're going to finish tonight with some examples of how we're trying to apply this here at Fresno State in our work. But we're also going to do a little bit of what I call movement breaks, because you don't want to sit down for 50 minutes or an hour. And given everything we're learning about the role of exercise in learning and talent development, it's critical that you connect these two things. This is a picture I actually just found today, a press release that came out. This is from a study at the University of Illinois. And these are composite brain scans of young children while they're taking a test, a cognitive test. But on this side here, this is a brain scan of the children who just sat for 20 minutes before they took the test. You're studying, you're cramming, right? This is the brain of the students who were moving for 20 minutes, exercising, walking on a treadmill, riding a bike before the test. Who do you think is going to potentially do better? I'd rather have that brain, right? So you can do that with exercise. So we'll have a few little exercise moments here to keep you moving. First one is another spelling one, but I'd like you to stand up. This will just take a moment, and you'll see this is going to help you get through tonight. I'd like you to take your dominant hand and write your name up in the sky in cursive. Oh yeah, there you go. Right? No problem. Now what about your last name? Write that up there. Now non-dominant hand. Oh, first name, non-dominant hand. Oh, that's ugly, isn't it? Okay. Last name, non-dominant hand, you could do it. Now, let's meet somebody. Get the first name of the person to your left or your right, depending. Someone around you, get their first name and write their first name in cursive. See if you can do their first name. Try their last name, too. Okay, time to sit back down. Look how much fun you're having. Didn't know you'd be having this much fun, eh? Okay. So hopefully you passed 2 spelling tests. You're on your way. See, multidisciplinary. So let's move on to the first need. The first principle is needs. Needs are the sparks that drive learning and talent development. Essentially, we learn the things we need to learn, right? And you're going to see, I hope, you walk out of here tonight and you're going to talk to somebody and you're going to say, man, that was really simple. I knew all that stuff. Yes. We overcomplicate things. We're looking for the answer. It's simple stuff over and over and over again. Number one, we do the things we need to do. If you're a student and you've been in a class, you've probably at some point in your career asked a professor, is this going to be on the test? Essentially what you're saying is, do I need to learn this? Right? So if it's on the test, I'll learn it. If it's not, I won't. Needs. Needs drive learning and talent development. 2 cases in point that I'm going to share with you, and then I'll show you a little bit of science behind this. The U.S. Army and long-term athlete development models. So this is a photograph in Afghanistan of some Army personnel. And the U.S. Army is quite famous for extensive debriefings. So after major events, they engage in a very formal process called an after-action review, or AARs. And the business world has really adopted this too, and they're trying to integrate this into a lot of companies very formally. So it's a very formal process. 3 questions they ask. What happened? What did we think was going to happen? Like, what did we expect? And what's the gap? What happened? What were we expecting to happen? And what's the gap between those 2 things? and then we work on a systematic way to try and close those gaps so we aren't caught by surprise. And we learn the things we need to learn. So we're identifying needs. And I love this quote. I was reading a U.S. Army colonel was asked about this. Why do you spend so much time on these reviews? And this is what he said. We realized a while ago that it's better to learn than to be dead. So you think about it, that's pretty stark. I mean, if we don't learn, we die. We make mistakes in this field. If we don't identify needs for learning and talent development, there's catastrophic consequences. People die, okay? And they actually go to the extreme by feeding all of these lessons. So every time we learn a lesson about a gap, it goes into an archive. A university, a data bank, they have a center called the Center for Army Lessons Learned, or CALL. You can look it up online. Very extensive. So it's not, I learned something, hey, let's try it, and then you move on, and then you retire or move out somewhere else, and the next person starts all over. No, 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 no. All those lessons are maintained. They do a very similar thing in Japan with their teachers in their schools called lesson study. The next example I want to show you here is called long-term athlete development. This is actually based on exercise physiology. And it was my understanding was a Canadian physiologist a few years back looked at how can we create a systematic, from birth to death, needs-based talent development model for sport. So basically, each one of these, this is Nordic skiing, and you can see each one of these levels identifies what needs to be done, what needs to be learned based on the physiological, biological characteristics of people at that stage of development. So if we want an Olympic champion, we start up here, different kind of coaching here, then here, then here, then here, then here, different training needed all the way through. So people have been doing this to some extent for many, many years, but having a formal model is becoming quite normal now, and a lot of countries are adopting this and adapting it. We do it here. USA Football, USA Hockey are just two examples where they've invested a considerable amount of resources in trying to identify sport-specific long-term athlete development models, basically needs-based learning. What do we need to learn when? So what's the science behind all this? These are neat examples, but is there any research or science to support that? And for sure there is. And I look at it from a motivational perspective. And there's lots of research on motivation, and there's also lots of theories. In fact, when I was preparing for this talk tonight, I learned that there's 32 clearly identified, legitimate theories of motivation. They're just guesses, right? That's all a theory is. So which one? Which one do I want to hang my hat on? I like this. Theories are great. Well, in theory, sure. Lots of theories. We all have theories. But what I found, the common denominator across all these motivational theories is needs. They all can come back to needs. Needs for affiliation, needs for competence, needs for relatedness, needs. You do things you need to do. You may have seen this before. If you've been in a class at some point, I'm sure you've seen it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is a bit dated. We've kind of moved on from this. There's actually been a lot of criticism on this. But it's kind of our first attempt, our very well-known attempt at needs-based learning. Basically, we're saying once you have to identify basic needs before you can move on to higher needs. And this would be your talent development up here. And this is, although it's been criticized a lot, it's been used across a lot of different areas. It's been adapted and adopted all over the place. Zombies have needs too, right? I need brains. I need more zombies. And so we can see that these needs can be adapted in lots of different contexts. But coming back to a real scientific example, probably the best science that I've seen specific to sport looking at needs-based talent development is this idea of self-determination theory. And there's three basic needs. Needs for competence. We all have a basic innate need to want to learn and get better at something. Needs for autonomy. We want to have opportunities for freedom, and I want to be able to invest and make choices on my own. And needs for relatedness. We're social animals by nature. So I like this theory a lot, and I think it supports this idea of needs-based learning. And an example of this in action in sport comes from this study. This guy here, Cliff Mallet, was an Olympic track coach in Australia. And he now is a professor at the University of Queensland, Australia, world-renowned scholar and coach. And he was here actually a couple weeks ago visiting with us. And he decided, leading up to the 2004 Olympics in Athens, because he was studying all this, and he said, I wonder if you could really apply it. It's neat to read about it in an article or a book, but what would that really look like if I tried to apply that to my team? So he's the sprint track coach for the Australian Olympic team, men's relays and sprints. And he decided to modify his training environment around, if we go back, these three needs. Can I design my training environment so that I'm helping my athletes meet these basic needs, while we're also, trying to develop our technical and tactical skills? And it worked out amazing because, not probably just because of that, but it had a nice ending. He actually was able to help them win a silver medal behind the American team in the 4x400 relay, the first relay track men's medal in the history of Australian sport. So that's good for me. I like to see that. It was good for Cliff and good for us. So if we finish up on needs, that first principle, needs are the spark that drive the town. So when you're trying to teach someone something, or you're trying to find your passion, ask yourself, what are those needs? What needs can I help people meet? Help people meet their needs, and you got them. Don't force them to do things. Find out what their needs are. Meet them where they are. Okay, second little break. I'd like you to stand up. Quick little break before we move on to the next principle. This one, nice picture related to the valley. We do a lot of fruit picking out here. Take your right hand, reach up like this picture, and try and grab that apple off the tree. All right, left hand, try and grab that apple off that tree. Come on, you can do it again, a little higher up there. It could be a plum, could be a peach, whatever your needs are, right? Okay, up you go. Let's see if you can do 5 on each side. Reach up there and grab it a little quicker. Just go back and forth. Try and do a few. Good thing I put that deodorant on tonight. There we go. Okay. Okay, excellent. Go ahead, sit down. We're going to keep moving. Our second principle, so we have needs. Our second principle is mastery. So you might think you need something, but do you really want it? Yeah, I need to make that team. Do you really want to make it? Do you want to win that event or accomplish that goal? This is a picture of who? Who knows? Gabby Douglas. Gabby Douglas, famous, one of the most famous athletes in the world at the moment. And this was at the 2012 London Olympics, American gymnast. So Gabby's a great example, a case in point, if you will, of mastery. You really have to want it, because you're going to fail a lot. If you want to do hard things, you're going to lose a lot. I always use the example in baseball. What's a great batting average in baseball? 400 is amazing, right? If you can bat 300, that's pretty good. But say you're doing 300, that means you're failing. You're the best in the world, and you're failing 70% of the time. So you're going to lose a lot. So Gabby's case at the 2011 Olympic trials, she fell off the balance beam 4 times in 2 days. Not so good, right? But she was able to bounce back. She made the team, and she went on to win the gold medal in the individual all-around event at the London Olympics, and was a member of the women's team that won the gold medal. First American woman to ever do that. First American gymnast to ever do that. Pretty incredible, yes. I'm sure Gabby would appreciate that, Chris. Very good. Okay. So mastery in action. 2 other cases in point that I want to share with you, because we got to go across disciplines. You can't just look in one discipline. Joseph Murray and John Wooden. You knew you had to have some John Wooden in here tonight if you had me in a class. So Joseph Murray, this is Dr. Joseph Murray. Joseph E. Murray died recently, and I learned about him driving into work one day on the radio. And I said, wow, that is perfect. That is mastery right there. I got to go and grab that interview. And sure enough, what I learned was Dr. Murray, his claim to fame is he's the first surgeon to successfully complete an organ transplant. This is the guy who made it happen. And he did it in 1954. He just recently passed away. So he started out, this is an example of mastery in action here. He started out working as a surgeon, a field surgeon in the Army in World War II. And he was charged with operating on burn victims and trying to do skin grafts. But it never worked. He failed a lot, and a lot of people died. And he was very bothered by this. So he felt the need to solve this problem, a 100-year problem. No one's been able to figure it out in medicine. Subsequently, when he returned from the war, he devoted his life to solving that problem, mastering that problem. And this is an example of a picture from one of his operating rooms. And eventually he figured it out. 1954 they did it, but it was between twins. So it's a step, but we want to save a lot of people, and we're not all going to be so lucky to have a twin or a related individual to help us out with a transplant. So to get to 1954, all the mistakes and errors and trials in the Army, 6 people died because he had 6 failed operations between twins before the first one was successful in 54. So 6 deaths. Now I got to figure out how to do it between unrelated people. I got to keep going. 30 more failed operations. 30 more people died before the first transplant between non-related individuals. Now imagine if he gave up, how different the world would be. Mastery matters. So there was a need, and it happened to cross paths with someone who really wanted it. Okay? And this is a quote from another quite famous surgeon here in the United States, talking about how he arrived at that amazing moment. Dr. Joseph Murray. For him, it was just one by one. How do you make this last operation go better than the last one? Science is a series of dead-end alleys, not a eureka moment. It is not an act of genius. It required sticking to this problem for a couple of decades, although I'm sure there was some help from above there too. But the idea is the ones who succeed don't give up when they fail, because you will fail a lot. In this case, people are dying, and you still want to figure it out. Sticking to it, remember, because we're going to come back to this idea of sticking to it. Little steps, incremental steps. It's not genius, okay? And he was subsequently awarded the Nobel Prize in 1990 for that willingness to stick it out, okay? Second example here, Coach John Wooden. And I've been really lucky to travel all over the world and meet a lot of different coaches and different people, and no matter where I go, people know John Wooden. And they have a John Wooden book on their shelf, and he's widely regarded as one of the greatest coaches ever. He actually was voted the coach of the century by ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and other outlets like that. And he's one of the best, I think, examples of mastery in action. Okay? John Wooden, if I go back here for a moment, John Wooden was considered the best basketball player in the world at one point in the 1930s. In fact, he's the first person to be elected into the Basketball Hall of Fame as a player and as a coach. There's now another person who did that. I think Lenny Wilkins did that. So he was very driven from a young age, and he was notorious as a player in college for following opposing teams' coaches after the games to talk to them about coaching and coaching strategies. Okay, hey, why did you do that? And why did it work out that way? And why did you use that play? So he's always had this drive to master things. Then he was hired to go and work at UCLA, and he became the head coach at UCLA men's basketball. And he was there 16 years before he won a national championship. He eventually won it, but it took him 16 years of trials, next best step, before he finally won a championship. But every year in the off season, he would do an experiment, a self-study. He would look at, like the Army, he essentially did after-action reviews after every season. What happened? What did I expect to happen? What's the gap? Close the gap, close the gap, close the gap. And if you get the right players, eventually you might win a championship. And this is a picture of one of his first championships here. And then he didn't stop. He still tried to keep getting better and experiment every off-season. And then he went on to win 10 national championships in 12 years, including 7 in a row. And I was lucky to spend some time with Coach Wooden when I worked at UCLA. And I was told he hated this picture because it wasn't about him. He didn't try to master these things to get a bunch of trophies. He was a teacher. But I like to use the picture because it just highlights the magnitude of the success. So when you put this in perspective, 16 years of failure before you win one, you keep learning, 10 out of 12 years, including 7 in a row. No other team, we've had collegiate basketball championships for 75 years in NCAA. And 6 teams have repeated. 6 teams have repeated. No team has ever won more than 2 in a row. He won 7 in a row. Okay? Small incremental steps, mastery. So what's the science behind mastery? Science behind mastery, if you're some of my grad students go, we just talked about this. Yes, growth mindset. So the growth mindset idea, there's a lot of science behind this. And if you don't have this book on your shelf, I highly encourage you to get this book, Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. She is a psychologist who made most of her work at Stanford, and she wrote this book. This is not a textbook, it's not a science book, but it's based on all her lifetime of research on trying to understand mastery orientation. Why do some people stick with it and others don't? And she called that a growth mindset. And a mindset is really just a way of thinking. It's an outlook. We all can do it. Okay? It's not fixed. It's not innate necessarily, but your environment around you definitely will shape it. And one way to kind of think about the dichotomy between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, those two paths that you could take, fixed mindset being you're smart or you're not, you got it or you don't, it's innate. A growth mindset being anything's possible. Think Buzz Lightyear over here, right? Felix Baumgartner, people who do incredible things. Anything is possible. And yeah, I'm going to fail a lot, but it doesn't mean I'm stupid. It means I didn't work right or work hard enough or figure it out. I try again. And I love this picture. I found this picture preparing for this too. This is the idea of mastery, right? It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. And one of the quotes I really like from Carol Dweck too is, becoming is better than being. It's not a point. It's not a destination, right? And there's a lot of science behind this. It's this idea of coming back after failures, but you have to have the right mindset. And there's lots of research to show how that can be shaped. And I've spent better part of the last 20 years working with people to try and figure out what would that look like in a sports setting with coaches. Do great coaches have these things in common? This mastery orientation, and we've been starting to find that in fact, yeah, great coaches really are all very different, okay? Here's an example of some very well-known coaches around the world, and they're all completely different. Top of their field in their sports, all completely different personalities, different styles, but the one thing they share in common is a growth mindset, a mastery orientation. They are learners. They want to get better, and they take the time to reflect and learn and get better all the time. So I'm going to actually let you hear Coach Wooden tell you in his own words. This is one of my favorite quotes from him. It's what you learn after you know it all that really matters. So you never know it all. You have to have this open growth mindset. And I was lucky enough, I've been lucky enough to continue to work with a group affiliated with Coach Wooden, and they shared a video with me they did with him before he passed away. This is a few years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. And I want you to listen to how he talks, just a short clip, but I want you to listen to how he talks about what he did every off-season. Every off-season he would go through this little self-study.
You're kind of a modular study. You took one area of the game
Yes.
each off season.
That's right.
And that has to do with getting deeper knowledge of
Yes.
what you're doing. How did you go about that? How did you choose a subject to study, and then how did you go about doing that?
Well, let's say it might be, just to get one example, let's say it might be free throw shooting. Well, I'd know teams and coaches, both high school and college, that their teams did exceptionally well on that. So I would write to them and ask them, and if those that had books out, I'd get their books and read the books, and then I'd talk to individual players that were excelled in that particular thing and put notes on that, and then eventually I'm going to tell them with one composite of all those. And if someone that was having exceptional success and did something that no one else seems to be doing, I want to know why. That others weren't doing it, they're so good. And then I contact that one individual personally to see what the object. I think of maybe an example. When Louis Alcindor chose to come to UCLA, immediately when he used to come, I contact Wilt Chamberlain, I contact Mel Counts, I contact coaches that had unusually tall players to see what they can tell me that can help me teach this youngster to work into our particular system and execute the fundamentals that are going to be necessary for me then to get him to work into our system. So I wanted to try and find out all I could about people that I thought were knowledgeable about working with an unusually big man, which I never had.
You're kind of a modular study. You took one.
So what we hear Coach Wooden talking about, in particular, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, previously known as Lou Alcindor, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, chose to go to UCLA. He's 7'2". Coach Wooden said, I never coached a 7'2" player before. I've won 5 championships, 6 championships, whatever it was, but I never coached someone like that. It wasn't above him to go and ask for help. So imagine that, you're one of the best coaches ever, and you're calling up, you're on the other end of the line, getting a call from this guy, hey, can you tell me how you coach big players? Very humble, because it's always about learning, mastery. So second principle, personal mastery really matters in a growth mindset. So number 1, needs. Number 2, mastery. Next best step, next operation, next season, next. Okay, quick one here. Don't worry, you're not doing the twist, but I'm calling it the twist. This one you actually don't have to get up before we move on to our last principle. This one, I'd like you to take your right hand, reach over to the back of your chair, and pull your back over. So you're twisting. There you go. Feel that twist. That's nice, isn't it? Yes. Okay, take your left hand over left shoulder and pull back. Feel the stretch. So I'd like you to try that 2 times on either side. 2 times on either side. You really feel the stretch. Okay, you're doing great. We actually have one more principle, one more activity, and then you have a game at the end for prizes. There's Starbucks gift cards, T-shirts, and Bulldog Shop or bookstore gift cards. So you guys stick with me. Don't start to fade. You're doing great, okay? All right, third one, settings. So needs, mastery, and settings. And basically what I've learned is that settings kind of trump everything else. Settings really, really matter. And this is a picture I took out of an airplane over Greenland, the coast of Greenland. I was flying back from a talk I gave in Ireland, and I just happened to get lucky and get a window seat. And I look out the window, and all I see is white, because it's all ocean, and then all of a sudden white and rock, and icebergs all over the place, icebergs. I said, wow, that's really amazing. I've never seen that like that before. So I took a few pictures, and it got me thinking, settings really matter. What if you were born in Greenland? You know, how would that really change your life if you were born in that setting? Nothing again. I hope there's nobody from Greenland here. I don't want to get all and say anything bad about Greenland. Greenland, beautiful place. But when I look at that environment, I don't care how much personal mastery you have and how much you need something. It's not happening here. You're not going to be Michael Phelps. If Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods, Mia Hamm, pick your Gabby Douglas, if they're born in Greenland, we're not talking about them. They might be really excellent at something else, but they're not the people we think they are today. Settings really matter. So what do you think the officials, because Greenland actually competes in some world championships in sports. What do you think the official sport of Greenland is? Any ideas? I heard hockey, curling, skiing. I haven't heard it yet. Bobsledding, keep going. Well, I heard someone sort of say it's actually officially association football, also known as soccer. The official sport of Greenland is soccer, but they aren't in FIFA, the international governing body of soccer, and they can't compete in the World Cup. One of the reasons is they can't grow grass, so they can't host international matches. They have no grass. This is a soccer match in Greenland, and I love the bleachers. Oh man, that's beautiful. Okay. So settings really matter, okay? And when we look at 2 examples I want to share with you, cases in point for settings and the power of settings, either find a setting, create a setting, how that impacts talent development is blue zones and Jamaican sprinters. So blue zones, you may have heard of this, blue zones. There was a study that came out in 2004, and it was a group of researchers who did a study in Sardinia, Italy. And they found that Sardinia was what they called a longevity hotspot. They had a hunch. There's some places around the world where people live really long, and they live well long. So they're not in care and in hospitals. They're out gardening and swimming and doing lots of stuff, and they're 100 years old, and there's a lot of them. You know, what's going on here? So Sardinia was kind of the epicenter of this, and people picked up on it and said, I bet you there's other hot spots around the world. And they found other hot spots, one being here in California, Loma Linda, and now we're trying to create hot spots, longevity hot spots. We call them blue zones. And they found 9 common features to these blue zones, one being move naturally. So people don't join gyms. There's no GB3 or Bally's. People are gardening and walking up hills and tending their property. So we move naturally. We have the right outlook. Kind of sounds like mastery, doesn't it? And growth mindset. We eat wisely. We eat natural, local foods. And then this one here, the right tribe, which is a micro setting. We hang out with the right people. And you could argue that talent is a bit of a virus. You catch talent. That's what Olympic training centers are. You put people together who really want something and give them the right resources, and you can do great things. And so the people you hang out with, this is an example in Minnesota. Now we're trying to create blue zones, not just find them. And this is an example of hanging out with the right tribe. And there's actually some research that came out recently looking at obesity as a virus. So you can catch obesity because you're much more likely to be obese if you have obese friends. And if you have multiple obese friends, you're even higher likelihood of being obese. So settings really matter, okay? The second example I want to share with you is Jamaica. And Jamaica, small island, relatively speaking, in the Caribbean, 2.8 million people, roughly the same size as Chicago. So imagine a country, Chicago being a country. Mark Lasorda is here, yeah, Chicago, the Bears, yes, okay. So roughly 3 million people. And they dominate sprinting around the world. World championships, junior world championships, and Olympics, men and women. Not just pick up a medal here and there, they win every event. So imagine Chicago winning every medal in men's and women's sprinting at all the major competitions. So why does it matter? Well, there's a lot of theories. In fact, I saw a documentary on BBC on an airplane again. I was watching it. I said, wow, this is kind of neat. Why is Usain Bolt in Jamaica so good at sprinting? And there's all kinds of theories. Some trace it back to ancestry and their heredity and their genetics. Some say it's the weather and the climate. You can run it's conducive to running. Others say it's Jamaican yams. It's a staple of their diet. I kid you not. That's the yams. It's in the yams. But in fact, it's all of those things in one place. It's the setting itself. And sprinting matters in Jamaica. Young boys and girls grow up dreaming to be sprinters, not basketball players or football players or soccer players. So it matters. Sprinting matters in that setting. So there's a need to get good at that skill. And one of the biggest events they have every year in Jamaica is their high school track and field championships. And here it really matters, okay? And so people invest a lot of time and energy in trying to get good at sprinting. Here's an example of a high school meet. What happens if you are in a setting where all these things come together and you invest in that over a period of time? You have this, all of a sudden, look at Jamaica out of nowhere. No, it's just small steps, a medal here, a medal at the World Juniors, a medal at the Olympics, 2 medals, 3 medals, because you have these role models around you and you have an environment that's conducive. And then you end up with this. This is the London Olympics. They swept some events, win every medal in an event. This is the men's 200-meter final. They won gold, silver, and bronze. All the medals. Like, leave some for us, please. I mean, come on, give us one. And so men's and women's 100 and 200 meters at the London Olympics and the relays, Jamaica won 75% of the medals. So Chicago winning 75% of the Olympic sprinting medals. That's pretty amazing. Power of a setting. So what's the science behind that? The science behind settings, I like to look at this idea of communities and complex family. And A complex family, there's a lot of research behind this idea when we study talented kids and we look at athletes, their family environment. It seems like there's this common thread of freedom and support. We usually separate them, right? You got to have lots of structure. No, you got to let them be themselves. It's both. You have to have an environment with rules and boundaries and then let them be free within those boundaries. Freedom and support, or autonomy and attachment. There's lots of research on this now. In fact, a book just came out on creativity and creating innovators, which featured this. An example of this is John Wooden. He created a complex family, and he created this idea of, in practice, lots of structure. Listen to me, follow me. Every minute of every practice was mapped out. It's not playtime, work. In games, create autonomy, attachment, freedom, support. In fact, he was famous for sitting on the bench during games. He was not running up and down the court like you see coaches today. And he even would say, I want to be surprised in the games. I want to see what they come up with and how they solve problems out there. Freedom and support and structure. And actually, Bree, I'm going to ask you if you could grab my bag with the power cord, the light's starting to flash. That's probably a good sign that we are near the end. But also with settings, some of the research on that. This is a neat study, came out in 2006. One of my colleagues, Jean Coté, up in Canada, did this study with some other people. And they looked at, they had a hunch too. They said, you know, I bet you there's something about small towns. It seems like there's a lot of pro athletes who come from small towns. And so they studied PGA, golf, baseball, hockey. They've replicated this with soccer and other sports, NBA, basketball. And you see over here, the American population, roughly 52% of the American population lives in big cities, cities of 500,000 or more, okay? And roughly 28% live in small, like Clovis, small cities, you could argue, under 100,000. So we would naturally expect to see across these sports, these are the percentage of players in these sports, these professional sports, who were born in cities of over 500,000. Percentage born in cities under 100,000, small towns. That's pretty striking. It got picked up by the media. He's interviewed by Wall Street Journal. They did a big feature on it. Small towns. That's why I played Small Town tonight in John Mellencamp. Small towns matter. Something about small towns. So what is it about small towns? I shared this in class this week too, this idea that you have small towns, there's something happening in those situations. One of them being an example here with Lockport, Nova Scotia. They just did a study, just came out on this, and small town, 650 people, one high school, 150 students in the high school. They graduate 24 students a year, but they win state titles every year. One high school, 150 students, and they win a state title, at least one, sometimes two every year. What happens in that little town? Well, some of the things they found was you have stable setting. So you're a kid, you play with the same kids for 8 or 10 years, because there's not a lot of people moving in and out of that town. So you develop relationships and connections. The need for connection and affiliation is being met. You have lots of role models. There's one gym. So the setting forces you, if I want to play basketball, there's only one place to play. And guess what? All the kids are playing there. So you play up. You play with older kids, and you see older kids playing. So settings really matter. This is an example of that. Another example of that, to finish up here on settings, I love this picture. It's maybe a little hard to see, but this is a grizzly bear sitting in the middle of a stream. And this is nominated for an award for Nature Picture of the Year. And what we see here is, essentially, remember settings. If you want to catch fish, fish where the fish are, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. If you want to be a great soccer player, create an environment that's conducive to becoming a great soccer player. Don't grow up in Greenland. Move. Move somewhere else. Move to Italy or move to Fresno and play with Brian. We want to create the optimal settings, so fish where the fish are. 3 principles: needs, mastery, settings. I'm going to finish up here. We're actually going to skip this one, but I'm going to finish up with what we're doing here at Fresno State. And actually, maybe we'll try this, Bree, if you don't mind. Do you have one? Okay. Because we just have a couple minutes left, but I don't want to get stuck here at the end. So on this one, Bree, are you okay plugging that in? You got it? Okay. So on this one, I want you to stand up for a moment. This will be our last little activity break. You stand up. Probably feels good to stand up right about now anyways. When I say full sit, behind on the chair. So full sit. You can do that. Right down, sit down, back on your chair. Full sit. Okay, stand up. Again, full sit. Now when I say half sit, behind doesn't touch the chair. So stand up, half sit. Okay, stand up. So you can try and follow me here, okay? Full sit, up, full sit, up, half sit, up, half sit, up, full sit, full sit. Okay, you're good. All right, okay. Thank you. All right, so you did it. So see, you feel like you're ready to learn again, right? So we're almost done. The last thing I want to share with you is examples of, because it's one thing to read about it in a research paper, or read about it in a book, or hear these fun little examples, but now apply it. How can we really use this? And the vision here at Fresno State, right in the beginning of our vision, we talk about applied science, essentially. We exist, one of the reasons is to improve the quality of the life in the region that we live. I'm going to share with you 2 examples of how we're trying to do this. I've been fortunate enough to work with the women's golf team, and Angie Cates, the golf coach, for the last 3 or 4 years, on trying to help her create a setting that's conducive to talent development. So we start with, what are the needs? What are your needs as a coach and with your program? We come up after a few meetings, well, I think we need to have, our student athletes need to have passion. They need to show passion for the sport. We need to achieve things, we need to win things and achieve goals. And we also need to have respect for the game and self and our competitors. These are our needs. This is what drives us. Then we put it up on a big board, and look what we got. Dave Neer's in the room. That looked like a good example for golf. We came up with PAR. We weren't trying to come up with PAR, but it was PAR, passion, achievement, respect. So we end up coming up, anytime we have an issue, we go back to passion, achievement, respect. Those are our needs. An example of how we adapt the training environment to meet those needs and be consistent with who we are and what we stand for. We had a pumpkin practice. Each year they do this now. They just brings out around Halloween, bring out pumpkins, put them on the driving range, target practice, and they compete trying to destroy each other's pumpkins. So it meets needs for relatedness, needs for competence, right? Needs for autonomy and choice, because I get to pick my targets and who I'm going to compete against. And they have a practice without even realizing they're having a practice in the middle of the season when they kind of need a break. But instead of giving a break, we'll have a practice that meets these needs. And they've been actually doing quite well, having some success. This is a photo in the fall. They won a tournament in Palm Springs. And part of it is because of these things that we're trying to build into that setting. Last example I'm going to share with you is from Fresno High School. So one of my former students, Dave Barton, and I, he's the athletics director of Fresno High School, a few years ago, we said, man, this is all neat science, but what would that look like in a high school sports program, athletics program? Could we create an environment like that so we have a really optimal talent development program in a high school? I said, sure, let's try it. So we're doing this at Fresno High School, one of the flagship high schools here in town. And across all 21 sports, we're trying to create a setting that addresses needs, mastery, and optimal talent development settings. And we found the needs, in that case, we want lots of kids out, maximum participation. We want them to come back, so engagement, and we want them to achieve things, skills and confidence and things like that. This is an example of a tool that we've created to help them stay close to their needs. Every coach, head coach of every varsity team after every game completes a card, an event and after-action review card, if you will. But if we ask coaches to meet and debrief, say, I don't have time for that. Well, you can take a minute or two and fill out a card that tells us what happened in the game, what was the score, and then did you meet your needs? So at the beginning of the year, each coach, we sit down and we say, what do you think is possible this year? This is a soccer coach. I think we'll have a good year if we can average 6 shots on goal each game. So you look at all these little needs, and if you're meeting all these needs, you're going to win some games and achieve some things. So you just circle, yeah, tonight we did. We had 17 shots. I didn't meet this one, I didn't. And you file it, and in the off season, when you have time, then we do a big review and look at these things. And they're starting to do really well with this, and we're making some good progress there. All right, so the last little thing, we're going to finish on here, about 2 minutes. What about my own life, right? Some of you may have kids, or you will have kids at some point. Why not try and apply this to your own family? So my kids are a little experiment. Right, my wife and I, hopefully it's going to work out. So this is my son Kyler, my daughter Malin, this is our pet alligator right here. And we are constantly trying to figure out ways to help address needs, mastery, and settings, create an environment, a complex family environment. And I remember the last example I'll share with you here. A couple of years ago, home for summer break, kids want to paint. Love art. Paint rocks in the backyard, painting the picnic table, painting the playground, painting. Can we paint the walls, Dad, in the house? No, you can't paint the walls in the house, but you don't want to squash that need and that sense of autonomy. So Janelle and I were talking, we say, well, are there any walls they can paint? You know what, our garage isn't finished. Why don't we set up a little paint shop in there, and they can paint the walls to their heart content, right? So they went out there, and we set up this little paint area, and they said, paint any wall you want, any way you want. And then the neighborhood kids got wind of it. I want to paint your walls too. Well, then they all come over and start painting the walls, and we had all these crazy things all over the walls. Now, you think, man, would I want that in my house? So it started with a kid with a need to master something. And we could have easily said, no, you don't paint on the walls. Don't touch the walls. You know, the typical, no. Instead, okay, no in the house, but how can we still nurture that need? And we found a way, and it worked out great, and the kids still love to paint today. So we're done with needs, mastery, and settings. We're going to do a little closing remark here, but don't leave because there's a game with prizes. So you have to hang on for 2 more minutes. Thank you very much.